we're pretty positive about the platinum price going forward. We're looking for an average over the next 6 months of $1,750, but we think that if conditions were right, it could rise as high as $1,900 an ounce. And really, we're looking at for a floor at about $1,550, because we think that the investor's attitude to platinum is so positive at the moment that it's difficult to see it descending much below that level. The market as a whole, we're looking at about 6 million ounces. The outlook for 2011 depends on a number of factors, which it's a little bit difficult to call at the moment. First of all, we've got an economic situation which is relatively uncertain. We've got the sovereign debt crisis in Europe. We've got other factors which aren't really related to the platinum market, such as the gold price, which will continue to have an important influence on the platinum price. And in turn, the platinum price will affect what happens in the two very important markets, the jewellery market and the investment market. So really what we'll be looking for next year, I think, is a market that's remaining pretty close to balance. Which way it goes is very hard to call at the moment, and will depend very largely on how much metal continues to flow into exchange-traded funds. We see a lot of potential in the medical market, particularly in China. Now, China and India are very large markets with relatively undeveloped, compared to Europe and the US, healthcare markets at the moment. And we certainly see over the coming years that there could be very large potential for those markets to adopt some of the high-tech medical devices which use platinum and which are in wide use in Europe and in North America. And if China were to use those devices on the same level as, for example, the Americans or the Germans or the French, then that would have a very positive impact on platinum demand.
Platinum is used in the biomedical industry as well as in anti-cancer drugs, and platinum is mainly used because it is biocompatible, so it doesn't react with anything in the body, and nor does it cause any nasty reactions in the body. So it's used in biomedical implants and things like pacemaker electrodes. It's also used in the tips of guide wires because it's radio opaque and it shows up under fluoroscopy, so the surgeon knows exactly where he is inside the body. It's also now just started to be used in stents. There's a platinum alloy stent being marketed by Boston Scientific, which again, its platinum is used because it's radio opaque. It shows up under X-ray, so then the surgeon knows exactly where he's placed the stent.
What is actually being done in South Africa by your factory that produces catalysts in Germiston?
Yes, well, basically Johnson Matthey catalysts produce here light-duty flow-throughs for diesel and for petrol applications. Also, we produce diesel particulate filters for diesel cars in Europe. And the last product that we produce here is heavy-duty catalyst for heavy-duty applications in Europe. We produce about 6 million pieces a year.
Well, we think that the palladium price is going to remain pretty strong. Market fundamentals are very good, and we'll be looking for an average of $710 per ounce over the next 6 months. Now, that could well prove to be conservative. We've seen the price move up strongly and then back a bit over the last few weeks. We think that it's possible that the price could get up to about $850 an ounce as a peak over the next 6 months, and really very much a positive overall outlook for palladium. Well, there's good reason to be positive about autocatalyst demand, and one of the things you have to bear in mind is, of course, that platinum and palladium are effectively substitutes for each other in this market. So it's conceivable that in the future, should we see a rising palladium price, which is entirely possible, that we might see some movement of platinum back into gasoline autocatalysts. Now, that's just speculation at the moment. These are things that could happen. It all depends upon the price environment. And it's important to remember in the autocatalyst market that nothing happens quickly, that catalyst changes typically take a couple of years to take place. For palladium, I think we would be much more positive in calling for a likely deficit next year, assuming that this is the last year of very large sales of palladium from Russian state stocks. Now, if it were to be the last year, if next year we were to see stock sales from Russia at a much reduced level, or indeed none at all, then we would almost certainly see a market in deficit.
The only industrial areas where there's any sort of price elasticity for platinum and palladium is actually where they can substitute for one another into autocatalyst applications. So in the gasoline application, that's fundamentally these days a palladium application. There is a potential, if the price of palladium were to rise so high that it was challenging platinum, there is certainly a potential for platinum to move back into gasoline catalysts. That could happen at any time because it was originally a platinum catalyst in the first place. In diesel, palladium has substituted for platinum to an average of about 25% already. That's slightly more challenging. It's a different technical environment. You've got much lower temperatures, you have different reactions going on, and palladium is not quite as good a catalyst in that environment as platinum is. But it will encroach, but it'll take a lot longer for it to get further into diesel catalysis. In the last couple of years, fuel cells have really started to enter a phase of commercialization, platinum-bearing fuel cells. We've seen that both in the portable sector, in mobile phone chargers, for example, which has been kind of a test market to get people aware of fuel cells, and more increasingly into the stationary backup power generation markets, where fuel cells are really starting to be sold in significant numbers. The challenge for hydrogen infrastructure is less than it is for an electric vehicle. Hydrogen in a fuel cell, hydrogen combines with oxygen to make water and to give off power. So it's the opposite of electrolysis, if you like, where you take water and you electrolyse it to produce hydrogen and oxygen. That consumes energy. It's the opposite of that, where it generates energy. So hydrogen is used with oxygen. You get the waste product is water, which of course is beautifully green, and electricity is generated from the fuel cell. The global car companies have all come together with a statement that they expect significant production volumes by 2015 of fuel cell vehicles. We'll see quite a significant number of fuel cell driven vehicles. I think the infrastructure is beginning to be rolled out. There's a lot of projects to provide hydrogen roadside. And it's not actually that big a challenge to provide hydrogen infrastructure as it is to provide electricity supply for charging electric plug-in vehicles.
Demand is increasing much faster than supply. What we've seen is a fairly stagnant supply position this year, with South African supplies virtually unchanged compared with last year, because of course in 2009 we saw a number of shaft shutdowns, which of course have impacted on production this year. On the positive side, I think it is fair to say that some of the mines are now making great strides on the operational, on the safety and on the cost fronts. So we do see some positive things happening in the industry, but overall in production terms it's a very flat picture this year.